Welcome back to another Trade Alts technical analysis update. Just wanted to do a follow-up from Thursday's video and give you my thoughts about what I think is incoming for the weeks ahead. With that being said, let's get started. All right, so quick announcement before I get started with the analysis here. Femex is offering up to a $4,600 deposit bonus. The link is in the description of the video if you are interested. And I will be doing a full tutorial on Femex similar to the one that I did for Bybit. So with that being said, let's take a look at NASDAQ. So we're going to start today. And we're going to start here on the daily time frame. So there's a whole nother chart. This is actually the chart that I'm using. If you're in VIP, you could probably break this down just as well as I can at this point. But for those of you who obviously haven't been in VIP, or I haven't spoke about, I don't speak too often about traditional markets, even though in VIP I speak about it almost every day. I do want to break this down for you. I think it'd be a little bit easier if I just kind of did the important stuff from scratch, so we can kind of see how I came up with it. But anyway, we're going to start off just looking very simply at the daily Ichimoku cloud, and I just want to make sure I'm on the right settings. I should be standard settings. At the moment, basically sitting right at Tenkin. Kind of like just looking at this, obviously, Kijun is way up here, about 12,900 ish, looking to work its way down over this upcoming trading week, as far as the forecasting dots are showing here. But really, for me, I'm kind of looking at Friday's close, or let's just say Friday's trading day in general. I do think that if we're able to take the high basically from Friday, I would look for a move up to basically mid 12,000s, somewhere around where you kind of have these daily wicks and you have this daily SR level here. Over the course of the trading week, again, as Kijun moves down, would naturally put price back into equilibrium at that point. So I do think like that's certainly possible. And kind of like the initial trigger I will look for is simply taking out Friday's high from this level. And I think if you got that, you probably do get a bit of, again, kind of like the beginnings of a potential relief rally. So the thumbnail of the video, maybe a little bit aggressive. To be fair, this has been obviously like a substantial move to the downside, across all markets. But again, like I do think that I wanted to follow up from Thursday's video essentially because I talked about quite a bit of bearish scenarios, and obviously I did mention like the relief rallies that are going to happen. They could be pretty substantial as well, right? But does that change anything as far as the bigger picture goes? That's the real question. And again, like you can have substantial rallies, which we'll get into here in just a few minutes. But does that change the overall picture of kind of like how the market is doing? No, not really. Like again, we'll kind of get into that here shortly. But on lower time frames, again, take out yesterday's high or Friday's high. I do think that you get a move up to about this level. Basically looking at somewhere around here. You could even draw a little bit of a zone here if you wanted to. Something like that. Like basically coming back up. So again, taking over Friday's high, I do think you have a further move to the upside. And again, be looking for that daily Kijun test, which would basically put price back into equilibrium. Here's the thing though. You come out on a weekly time frame, and we just completed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 red weekly candles on NASDAQ. And again, that's a very substantial move to the downside. So obviously we talk about lower time frame stuff here, but from the higher time frame perspective, you see how far price is away from your TK lines, right? So from your Tenkin and Kijun, especially Kijun. So what is that kind of telling you? Well, obviously the trend is very severe to the downside, but if price was to rally off of these regions, you like just to get back to where your Tenkin is, obviously over the next month or so, you see how aggressive the Tenkin is going to move to the downside. So again, remember each dot that you see here these are weeks. So like this will be next week, this dot will be 2 weeks out, etc., right? So like this is going to take some time for this to ultimately to play out. But again, price is very far away from your TK lines, especially your Kijun. And when you see something like this, similar to here, right? Which I would argue price did a pretty good job. And obviously you had a wicks above, which we'll get into shortly. You had some wicks above, but even if you look at this from a closing basis, this previous week here, like Kijun did a very nice job holding price down. So, you know, weekly time frame, weekly Kijun did a pretty good job. And then price obviously has its first close below cloud, even has support here before you had the mean reversion up and then rolled over to the downside. Now, obviously we're below cloud cleanly. So, but like even your equilibrium test, Kijun's way up here at 14,000. Just to give you an idea, like you can have a pretty big bounce. So very technical. I'm gonna delete everything here. I will say I'm gonna get into some Fibonacci work here. So I'm gonna turn this off for a minute and maybe I'll come back to this a bit later. But I kind of wanted to walk you through some levels that we have been talking about in VIP for a very long time. And they've turned out to hit pretty well. And we just hit one on Friday. So again, kind of why I wanted to do this update from Thursday's video, because Friday's price action actually was a bit telling in my opinion. You know, as far as to like what we could see over the next upcoming couple of weeks, and we did hit a pretty technical level right here at almost the low. Let me take a sip of water real quick before I move on. All right. So the first thing, kind of like the first thing that I want to do, I'm going to work my way left to right, is that there's one thing that I spend a lot of time on, especially like when I'm trading ranges, that type of stuff. But I actually like to do when I have very clear lows and very, obviously this is a top, but if you take a volume profile pool, so basically your fixed range pool from your COVID low in 2020 up to your all-time high here, it'll give you an idea essentially of like where that volume is coming in at, right? So you have your value area low, which is very close to the low that we're at here. Actually mark these off. So this would be your uptrend value area low. This would be your uptrend point of control. And basically up here at the high would be your value area high. So if you just zoom in, I mean, you can see like these levels are pretty well respected, like very well respected. Let's delete that. So one of the first things that I look at, I kind of like this is as things were breaking down, put in its high, as things start to break down, we're looking for targets, like potential targets to the downside, to look for trades off of, right? So one of the first things I did was take basically a Fibonacci retracement from this swing low up to our current all-time high, looking for corrective moves to the downside to trade off of. And you got like 50%, basically the 50%, the midpoint of this low to high was very well respected. Got a couple nice, like really nice moves, nice support area, which again comes in like you have a pretty nice SR region here, all right? So you have basically this week-long consolidation, like 50% retracement coming in, showing support, price moves higher, ultimately moves down to the 6.6, get another nice bounce off of that, and then starts to head lower. So again, like overall did relatively well. And you'll notice that the 1.618 expansion is actually already populated here. But if I turn this into an expansion, you can kind of see some of these lower targets. So the 1.272, perfect hit here. Big move to the upside off of that before ultimately rolling over very close to your 1.618, which this is a major target. You see we came very close to that. And we had this really nice kind of daily SR level here, basically this daily support region right here at the low. And you had nice confluence with your 1.618 Fibonacci expansion. Again, came very close to that. And you had a very substantial move to the upside. So again, nice correction to the upside. So if you look at where this correction ended, right? And then obviously we proceeded to roll over significantly and come and test new lows. You might be surprised or not surprised. If you're in VIP, you're not surprised. But basically taking a Fibonacci retracement, let's go standard. I guess I didn't even need to do standard. I really could have just done a golden pocket. And you see that NASDAQ, absolutely massive market, that fibs are quite well respected. So from this swing high, basically it's very close to your all-time high, but then you had this basically sideways range that was put in here before price broke down aggressively. You have your high down to your swing low after coming into this daily SR level 1.618 expansion, right? So nice confluence here. Where does price push up to? Again, basically near your uptrend point of control, but more importantly, right into the 618. Literally right into the 618. It doesn't get any better than that, honestly. So you had a nice corrective move back up to your golden pocket before rolling over, obviously very strongly to the downside. So what's interesting about this level that we're bouncing off of at the moment? A couple of things. Number one, so again, you're in VIP. We've been walking through this for months now. Like we've been trading this actively. We've known this, again, these levels we've known ahead of time. Been speaking about this for quite a while. Publicly, not so much. Because I haven't been doing too many updates, which again is part of the reason why I closed VIP, made it free for everybody who's been in VIP, and so that I could get back to doing some public stuff, because again, that's kind of like that's what I like to do, right? And I'd like to try to like share my analysis with obviously a much larger group of people. But anyway, so came right up to your golden pocket. Now the next thing that happened, again, that we were kind of looking for, was you have off of this same high down to the same low. So you have your 2 points, which by the way, so this is publicly, I've released the first 2 Fibonacci videos in this series. I believe it was the intro to Fibs and then the Fibonacci retracement. So I think, so volume 3 or the third video in the Fib series is actually talking about Fibonacci extensions, which I'm literally about to use right now. So we have our first 2 points, and then we have our third point, which happens to be this swing high. So once this swing high is put in and again starts to show respect, you already can be forecasting this, which we definitely did. So basically coming up to the high, again, 3 points, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, and then you can get your moves based off of that. So your extension targets that you're looking for. Well, where's the low here? That's your 1-to-1 extension. So this is your first target. And it hit perfectly, and you're getting a pretty nice response off of that. Oh, by the way, your uptrend value area low is also pretty much right here. What else is here? Well, kind of the same story. I'm going to show you how to do an expansion from here to here. So again, the correction, right? You have your move to the downside, looking for a corrective move. Well, you can also do, I'm going to make this just a regular Fibonacci retracement, again, from your low to high, looking for pullback targets, right? Price moves lower, nice respect to your 382, get a little bit of support here. Ultimately, it moves down to your golden pocket, right? I'm not going to draw the golden pockets, we look the same as this. But again, nice support, stab into it, move to the upside before rolling over. Once you take out this low, then you can look for expansion targets, which you don't really need to because it's already there. So I don't actually need to turn this into an expansion, although I could, just to show you. So you can literally turn this into expansion. Again, I have this all preset in my settings to be able to easily do that. But really, all you're looking for, right? So if I just turn this back into just a regular Fibonacci retracement, your expansion is right here, your 1.618. And wow, like phenomenal confluence with what? The 1-to-1 extension. From here. So you have expansion levels coming into extension levels, coming into your uptrend value area low, and this is your support. And from your support, so again, this was Friday. So I did, obviously the last public update I did was on Thursday, saw this on Friday, had a VIP live stream, and obviously had CME open up a few hours ago. So there's been quite a lot that's changed since then, really. So off the low, you're about a 4.5% move off the low so far, which is pretty substantial. Like for traditional markets, that's a pretty big move. But to be fair, we've had quite a few like heavy days recently. So just like we came into this expansion level and you saw the reaction based off of that coming into this daily SR, and you had nice confluence here. expansion target hit, you have a very substantial move to the upside, right to your golden pocket. Again, perfectly, like this is like amazingly technical. Rolls over into what? Your one-to-one extension. So just to show you and like clarify the one-to-one extension, because some people get hung up on this a little bit. All a one-to-one move is it's simply, if you were to take, so you can even just use a trend line. If you're starting from this high and you draw a trend line, okay, down to your low. So the one-to-one is just looking for a carbon copy of this move here, starting at the end of, or basically the end of the corrective phase. Okay, so you have your one-to-one move here. You can literally just hit control, clone this. And if you put the top of basically the start of your move down to the bottom of your move down, you just clone this trend line, move it up to the beginning of your correction, essentially, or sorry, the end of it. You can see where your one-to-one ends, and it's basically the low. So this is your one-to-one target. That's all it is, just so you can see a little bit easier what that actually means. Okay. So anyway, the point I'm making here is that we came into very important support level, and price is respecting that support level at the moment. So as long as price is respecting this level in the same fashion that it did here, kind of the same thing, you got to stab down into this region, very strong move to the upside, right? I guess I can leave that there. So off of kind of this first test, which is, to me, this is a test, you got a 10.5% move to the upside before coming back down and giving a more formal test of this level. And again, kind of like a swing, like basically a sweep of these lows before having another big move to the upside. So remember that, like we had a 10.5% move off of the first time we came down to test this region, ultimately rolling back over, coming back down to these support regions, and then getting a pretty big bounce. I think this one was almost, yeah, it was 18% move to the upside. So again, like you had a really nice corrective move here, a very nice corrective move, but did that change anything? No, we still rolled over and made new lows. That's the point, right? So you could have 18% moves to the upside, which is naturally going to get a lot of people incredibly bullish when they see that, thinking that the lows are in, or going to new all-time highs, so on and so forth. And then what happens? We get rejected quite nastily here, by the way, roll over, make new lows, and here we are. There's no reason why we couldn't have something similar. Now, is it going to be a carbon copy of this? I don't know. Which if that was, so like, again, we have our low for the time being. Maybe we have a bit of, like, I do think that we could have, and I kind of went over that scenario in the beginning of the video, right? Taking out this high. I do think that we can move up, again, maybe to 12.5, kind of throw Ichimoku back on, give you a little bit more corrective targets. And then your Kijun at the moment is sitting kind of where this data is, although it's going to be moving down naturally. Like this region, important support. If this region is lost, then we have moves significant, like we have moves probably another 4 or 5% lower at that point. Now, again, if you go to this chart where I already have all this stuff mapped out, kind of see this support region here that I'm looking at, which I'll probably say for a different video because, again, this video, I don't want this video to take too long. But we are looking, there's going to be other levels of interest there. So let's see here. So again, I'm going to turn this off just for a quick second. So now that you have a pretty good local low here actually to work with, you can start to pull, again, kind of like you can use Fibonacci. Start from this high, and then you're assuming that this is a low, right? So again, if you're going to have corrective targets to the upside, you basically, you can start it right now. To kind of identify those levels. So the first area, the area that's always going to be of interest to me is the same thing, right? So this golden pocket is basically the same as here, right? In terms of like looking from this high to low, you have your correction to the golden pocket and then moves lower. If this was to play out in a similar fashion to this, which again, is it going to? I mean, it certainly can, but I really would like to see other forms of confluence there as well. Which you kind of, I mean, there's a bit of confluence there. I'm not gonna get too much into this, but like something like this where you have a 382, which in really strong trending moves, 382 is the one that tends to hold up more frequently than others in terms of like support or resistance. So your 382 is sitting right at this old day level, which, oh, by the way, was the 1.618 expansion. That was respected incredibly well here, right? So if you zoom in, So let me delete, I'm going to delete, not to confuse people, but I'm going to delete this just for a second. That way it cleans up this area a little bit more. But what is a 382? Like, what kind of confluence do we have at 382? Well, we have 382. We have this old daily SR level here. Again, that was previously well respected. So what was once support got a perfect bounce off of that into like a very good, level, the golden pocket. Comes back down, unable to hold the same level of support, and it's lost. And you make new lows. So what was once support could certainly be resistance if retested, right? Which would put you back up to around just sub 13K on NASDAQ. If it reclaims that level, then yes, naturally, at that point, really, I would be looking for a potential bounce, again, like continued reaction up to the golden pocket. But first, again, step by step, right? Level to level. Although that, again, the 382 kind of stands out to me a bit more than, like, this is more, to me, like there's a bit more confluence here. Which, by the way, off the low, that would be about a 12-13% bounce. So that's like, that's a great bounce. I mean, that's certainly, again, that's like very sizable. Before possibly rolling over. So maybe something like this, right? So kind of like work our way up and then do that. Because again, the trend very clearly bearish. There's nothing bullish about what we're seeing. Again, you're going to get corrections. You're going to get very nice retracements, essentially. Like, you're going to get nice corrective moves to the upside. And it doesn't change. It doesn't really change anything on a higher time frame zone. So go back to the weekly just for a minute and throw the weekly cloud on, just to kind of see where things are lining up. Okay. Which, by the way, so kind of going back to this golden pocket, the first test, which we just went over, like, you look at where your weekly Kijun is again. On a closing basis, it did a phenomenal job, but look at where your wicks were coming up into what, like very substantial levels, right? Very big resistance. Wasn't able to close above Kijun. Certainly wasn't able to close anywhere up here or above, and you got a huge move to the downside. So at the moment, your Tenkin sitting here, basically a 50% retracement, and your Kijun, your weekly Kijun here, is sitting where? Just about where your golden pocket is. Like, do you expect this to move up in 1 week? Very unlikely. This is probably, if we do make our way up here, in a similar fashion here. I mean, if you think about it, so it took really, depends how you wanted to do it, but we took basically stabbed down in this region, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This took like a month and a half in order to kind of like play this move out, right? Like, once we kind of found a bottom here, which we, to be fair, we did. I know it might be hard to see, but we did tick lower here. The point is, like, this is going to take some time, more than likely, to play out. So if we just made our low, like, we could easily see this take a month or so or longer, right? There's no rule there, like how quick something has to happen. The point is, if you look at where your weekly Kijun is at the moment and kind of like look at where it's gonna be over the next month or so, it's pretty darn close to the same. Like, you're gonna be looking at the same region. So again, assuming we get a bounce that high, or looking at where your Tenkin is obviously it's much faster reacting. It's gonna move down pretty aggressively and then kind of go from there, right? So like, kind of the first step for me, similar to here, is like, we're not even anywhere near the weekly Tenkin yet, not even close. So in order for me to care about the Kijun, it's got to get above Tenkin first, right? So again, over the next couple of weeks, Tenkin's going to be moving aggressively to the downside. If price is able to reclaim that, then yes, I would be looking for a further move to the upside. But just to put things into perspective, to show you again why, for me, nothing really changes in terms of like overall macro bullish or bearishness. Like, I have no reason to be macro bullish at the moment. Now, obviously, how you read this is different, right? But the thing I'm going to say is that we haven't spent a lot of time below cloud. So if you this is a weekly time frame, by the way. I mean, again, this is like 2016, 2018. You see, like, we haven't spent much time below cloud before, like, almost having these V-shaped reversals, right? Obviously, COVID was a V-shaped reversal. 2018 here, this big corrective move to the downside, V-shaped out of that pretty nicely. Look at like what's happening here. Like, we are very far below cloud. We've spent the last, 1, 2, 3, 4, like basically month below cloud. And we're going to spend probably at least, like, we're a substantial amount of time below cloud. The point is, like, this is to me, this is like change of behavior. right? This isn't the same as before, in my opinion. Just looking at this from purely like a technical analysis standpoint, like this is much different than it's been, change of behavior. So for me, again, there's no reason for me not to think that we have potentially more downside, number one. But even if we have a nice corrective move to the upside, that doesn't change anything for me until like we break something like this high. It had like and which was kind of like near all-time highs, right? Like we would have to put in a very substantial rally in order for me to say, you know, again, this is just kind of how it works for me. So like you're never going to catch the bottom, you're never going to catch the top when it comes to Ichimoku. You get the point. Like we came up here, made a high. It's not that we started losing Kijin, got a bearish TK cross, etc., etc. Like I didn't catch the high on this, but again, if you can catch most of the trend, I'd argue that you're going to be able to position yourself relatively well. And this is a weekly time frame. This is going to take a lot of time to play out. So anyway, I do think that we have, like, to summarize everything that I went over, and kind of why this took me a little bit longer to do is because, again, I haven't done this publicly, so I wanted to show you where I'm getting all this from. That way I don't just throw it at you and then you're like, what is this guy talking about? Like, I wanted to break it down for you a little bit more and show you like where the levels what the levels are that I'm looking at, how I got them, and kind of why I think they're important, right? So bottom line is, as long as this low holds, we could certainly roll over and revisit this level again, just like we did here. We certainly could do that. And there's kind of like, you have this weekly level here, even at 11,000, right? So there's like some weekly support coming in here, which I have on my other chart. Like even just looking at this, you do have like a weekly support level sitting here. There's a monthly support level in this region as well. But anyway, there's some pretty important support below us. We certainly could come down and make slightly new lows, something like that. But I do think, especially looking at the weekly cloud, that I think a bit of relief is on the way again, like relatively soon. Do we get all the way up here to like 13.8? I don't know if we do, but I do think that at the minimum, like I do think that at some point we're going to come back and test probably around like 12.8, 12.9, something like that. I do think we could have a bit more of a corrective move to the upside at some point in the relatively near future, meaning like the next month or so, right? Depends on how this week goes, next 2 weeks, whatever. But like I do think that we're gonna get a mean reversion at some point, very likely, and then from there we'll see what happens. But that's kind of how I'm looking at NASDAQ. So why am I spending so much time on NASDAQ? Well, I think, you know, Bitcoin's relatively pretty correlated to what not only NASDAQ is doing, but traditional markets. And if NASDAQ is putting in a significant rally, I would probably argue that Bitcoin's going to be doing something very similar. So that kind of leads me to like the next phase of the analysis, right? Talking about Bitcoin. So that's what we're going to move into. I'm probably going to stick to lower time frames because on Thursday I stuck to more higher time frames, kind of similar like I'm doing on NASDAQ here. I just think it's really important for me to lay the foundation to kind of like build on the rest of the public videos that I'm going to be doing, because I'm going to be doing these a lot more frequently, hopefully. But I wanted to kind of like walk things back a little bit and get everybody caught up to as far as like how I'm viewing the market and why, and like looking at the technicals. So again, I apologize if this took a little bit long, but I think it's important to kind of like get everybody up to speed as to what I've been looking at. So anyway, I do think we're near a correction to the upside, which would be some welcome relief to the markets. Very likely welcome relief to crypto. But again, we could certainly, kind of similar to here, like we could come revisit these lows for sure. So it's kind of like I would say it's a coin flip, but I think it's more likely to the upside, especially if we take out Friday's high. And especially if we can close above Friday's high, then, you know, kind of reclaiming, so here we didn't get it, right? Basically open, we revisited, but then we closed way down here. If we're able to take out Friday's high, close above, then again, I'd be looking for a bigger, which I don't remember if I talked about, or if I actually looked at it on this perspective. No, I did. But anyway, that would kind of like put us in position to have on the daily time frame at least a mean reversion there, which puts you at 12.8, 12.9. And again, off the lows, that's about a 12%, 12 to 13% move to the upside, which that's substantial. So in traditional markets, 12, 13%, that is a substantial move. So let's go to Bitcoin just very briefly on Bitcoin. All right, so here is Bitcoin on kind of like a lower time frame, just really looking at this range that we've been trading. You know, kind of like at the moment, we have this daily SR level here, which got hit perfectly. So I'll just show you on a daily actually what it looks like. This is something we talk about in VIP quite a bit. So anyway, you have this daily SR level form here. What happens literally the very next day, which we see this happen quite often, actually. You'd be surprised how often this happens. It's not always the next day, but sometimes, you know, it's not too far after, where you have this daily SR level form, price opens up and actually comes back on. If you look at that wick low, holding as support, giving you a nice move to the upside. So kind of going back to 4-hour level, aren't getting a good view of this, but just showing you this is where your daily SR level was. Price obviously moved higher, opened up and came back down, gave you that perfect test of that level, and you got a, you know, over a 6% move off of that, which is absolutely tradable. For me, this level, I would probably remove it at this point. If it was a higher time frame level, I'd probably keep it on, but for me, like, that's good enough. And we actually have a new daily SR level here at 29,151. So I do think that, again, like, it could be interesting opportunity. Price comes down to low 29K, something like that could give you a nice balance. We obviously have a naked point of control that's untapped at the moment. It's very close to where price is at 29.9. I think it's, I mean, we're like literally right there. So that one probably gets hit if I had to wage a guess. But like some very low time frame stuff that I'm looking at here, I can show you the range actually. So the current range here, again, it's going to look pretty crazy. But if you're down on like a 5-minute chart, for example, like you'll see, again, value area high, perfect tap, by the way, which I was not trading today. I was kind of just hanging out with my family. But had I been trading this, again, like look at this absolutely flawless tap of value area high. Your range equilibrium getting some pretty nice interplay here, getting a nice bounce off of that. Your value area low, again, perfect tap of that, pretty much very close. But you can see, again, range level is doing a good job for the most part. And certainly, again, this is an absolutely tradable range, 100%, and kind of like showing you that, like, very, you know, sideways range, nice. Basically, we had this big impulsive move to the downside, obviously, so it's completely normal to just see some range bound price action. Just let things cool down for a minute, let things reset, and then kind of go from there, right? My viewpoint from Thursday's video really hasn't changed. We have literally not left this range, which again, if I just put on, where are you? Just put on kind of like where the range low is. I do think that obviously if we start trading and getting acceptance below this range low at basically 28,500, if we see that, I think it's highly probable that we come down to the same levels that I was talking about on Thursday, where I think, you know, honestly could be a pretty decent opportunity, low to mid 27K or something like that. That would be levels of interest for myself. And then if we're able to kind of push above the range high, obviously get acceptance outside of the range, just ended up being a deviation. You have to excuse my dog. But if we, again, price gets acceptance above the range high, moves outside the range, does not deviate like we did here, take out this weekly naked point of control and this untapped daily SR level that's sitting there as well, basically above 31,300, let's just call it. You get a somewhat higher, even a 4-hour would probably do it. But, you know, some kind of like higher time frame closure, then at that point, I do think that we could actually be pushing, maybe get a bit of a short squeeze up to, you know, again, like this 32K region, something like that, 32.9. I do think, like, again, level to level, I don't like to jump ahead too much, but obviously which I believe I took it from basically right here where we started to get really impulsive to the downside. We just take a Fibonacci retracement, and that's where this golden pocket is coming in. So it's literally from where we got impulsive to your current low. The golden pocket, basically the area between 618 and 66, is sitting literally right here. Now, in my opinion, there's a lot of confluence here. You obviously have that quarterly SR level. It's high time frame pivot level. You have a naked point of control, which, by the way, this was also a naked point of control at 31,350. There was a naked point of control here. I actually took a short here and still have that short open as well. Part of the short anyway. I actually took profit. I'm part of that position, but I still have that short running for the moment, just a scalp. But I have all these shorts as well. And then your, so again, coming up into this, there was some nice confluence here. Price backs off and continues to be range bound. That ended up being your deviation. Price gets acceptance back inside the range. You just continue to trade the range, right? So, which, like, by the way, a move to the downside, if that did happen, break range low, we could have something similar where we get kind of like that move lower, get acceptance back inside the range, and then like it would look something like this. All right, so let's just, I'm not saying to do it right now, but I'm saying if we did something like this and then get acceptance back inside the range, then you certainly could have a deviation similar to here and then look to actually take that to the top side of the range again. Again, just saying that could happen. But that's where this golden pocket is coming in at. What's here? You have a negative point of control right at the 618. Gotta love that. And what is in this region? CME gap, right? So, which obviously a lot of people are going to be looking at CME gap, but that would fulfill that if price was able to come back into this region. Now, obviously, there's some levels above. I don't want to talk too much about that because I'm going to make this video a lot longer than it needs to be already. But there's obviously some important point of controls above. There is this massively important 37.7 level, which we actually, this is where we broke down from, which I explained in Thursday's video. I think it's possible. Now, obviously, like I went over earlier in the video talking about NASDAQ, talking about traditional markets. Like if the markets are tending to rally, if they're rallying really difficult, like really hard to the upside, obviously, like I think crypto is going to get pretty sizable relief rally as well. We could see those upper levels. But obviously, level to level for me, we are still within this range, right? I know it's kind of a lot of lines here, but we are literally within this range. There's nothing else happening at the moment. Now, I do think that this is probably going to change this week. If I had to guess, I think we probably trade outside of this range sometime this week. But we have been in it for 10 days now. 10 days, something like that. So again, big impulsive move to the downside. Obviously, get that strong buyback. I don't know if I class it as like super strong, but we got obviously move higher, and now we're range bound. So nothing wrong with that. And we, as long as we are continuing to be in this range, you can kind of see like how I'm trading the range, right? Like how I would be trading this range. So kind of waiting for, again, I think like for myself, if price were to come into this low 27, mid 27 region, would be an area of interest for me. Or if we're to actually not have another deviation here, if we're actually to be able to reclaim range high, break above this weekly naked point of control, this untapped daily, and show some strength, then yes, I do think we could have that larger bounce to the upside. So I don't think that I need to really say too much else as far as Bitcoin goes, because there's not a lot that's changed since the previous video, but we will continue to update this week. And if there's any new developments, obviously we'll be posting some levels and whatnot and some ideas. So with that being said, obviously the end of the video now. If you could like the video, I'd greatly appreciate it, as it helps my channel out tremendously. So obviously if you like the content, you appreciate it, that's one very easy way to give back to the channel. Greatly appreciate that. So anyway, trade safe out there. It's going to be a very interesting week ahead. We'll see you on the next one.